Great. Thanks, Cassandra, and thank you, everyone else who's joining us tonight. Like Cassandra said, this is our presentation on the first school transition. And so the intent behind this presentation is really to provide general information about child development, the preschool cycle program, important things to consider for yourself, your families, and your children who are transitioning into kindergarten at our schools. My name is Jake Ahern-Davy. I'm a social worker with the school board. As part of my role, I'm a transition facilitator. And so part of that role is to aid and support families in navigating the first school transition, providing resources, accessing services, providing general support for our younger students in our elementary schools. And I'll let Andrea and Anne introduce themselves as well.
Yeah, and my name is Andrea Shadler. I'm a social services officer with the Western Quebec School Board as well. And I also work as a transition facilitator with Jake in multiple of elementary schools.
Hi, everybody, and welcome. So my name is Anne Velkoff. I also work at the Western Quebec School Board. I am working as an educational consultant right now, specifically with preschool, as well as grade 1 and grade 2. So what my job is just to go and help teachers and administrators with, sort of unpacking the program and looking at the pedagogy of it, as well as any of the challenges that might that might come about. Anyway, we're just so delighted that you're all here. This is the milestone for you. If this is your first child going off to kindergarten, I'm sure we can all empathize, and just glad that you're here. If it's not your first child, then we're excited that you're here and wanting to learn a little bit more about our new preschool program.
Great, thanks, Anne. So go ahead, Cassandra, to the next slide. So just to give everyone sort of a brief overview of our role. So I spoke about it a little bit earlier. Our job is to facilitate your child's transition to school by sharing information and resources with families about what you can do to prepare them for school, prepare yourselves for them transitioning as well. We work collaboratively with the school, with the family and community partners like Connections to ensure that they have a successful school transition. And we do a few other things. You may have already filled out or received a questionnaire. It's called Getting to Know Your Child Better. There's a lot of different questions about child development, about your child, their likes, their dislikes, things that they're interested in. And that's really intended to support a successful entry to school. We share that information with the schools and with your child's teacher in order to make sure that they have the best possible start and that we have a little bit more information about them right off the bat. So like I said, Andrea and I
This meeting is being recorded.
Andrea and I are, you can just go back one slide there, Cassandra, or I guess it doesn't really matter. We're transition facilitators. We're in, between the two of us, we cover all of the elementary schools. So across the Western Quebec School Board, there are 19 schools, elementary schools, 14 of which offer K4 program. We go as far north as Rouyn-Noranda and as far south as Gatineau. And yeah, each of us, have our own separate schools. And so you might have either come across our names or our information. If you do have questions, you can ask them here, of course. And also we'll share our emails at the end of the presentation. And we also have a website with a lot of the resources you'll see tonight that you can access as well. And if you have any questions, you can reach us through there as well. All right, next slide, please. So we're going to talk about a few sort of big subjects tonight. Anne is going to cover the preschool cycle program. We're going to look at sort of a profile of a preschooler, understanding what transition means to them, what that looks like for them, characteristics of a preschool age child, and their development. And then on the next slide, we're going to look at three main areas to support in supporting our children for school that are play, emotion focused, and attachments. We're going to look at tips and strategies to help facilitate a smooth transition around building structure and routine, playful connections for transitions with parents, with teachers, with staff, bedtime solutions for younger children, and easing bedtime separation anxieties as well. And then finally, we'll look at some other considerations around building an understanding for the child and building attachments and relationships as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Anne to talk about the preschool cycle program.
Thank you, Jake. Appreciate it. So what this new preschool program is that it's a new program in Quebec. It was launched 3 years ago. So now it encompasses both the K4 and the K5, and it considers them to be a preschool cycle. So in our elementary schools, we have the preschool cycle, which is again K4, K5. We have cycle 1, which is a grade 1, grade 2. Cycle 2, grade 3, grade 4, and then cycle 3 is 5 and 6. And so what this means, it just means that the competencies that they have, for each cycle allows the child a 2-year continuum to develop that competency. So it's not just, okay, we've got some expectations for the end of grade 4, with the child being a particular age. It really allows a much more a better understanding of child development within the elementary sector. And specifically for us here tonight, it's specific to the preschool. So it's a significant change from previous years because it truly represents research and understanding and the courage to champion a true program, because it's really meeting the developmental needs and the stages of children within the age group of 4 to 6. And it permits children to really do what they do best, okay? And that's exploring their world, experimenting, socializing with others. In other words, play. Sandra, if you could go to the next slide. So I'll just give you a minute just to read that. So again, the huge change is that there really isn't any sort of pedagogical benchmarks here, because it's really looking at their child development within the context of a holistic environment. It does set them up, though, for understanding what the school environment is all about, getting them used to routines, the schedule. So that's a really good segue into them, joining grade 1 in the school. And again, if the child is ready to look at early literacy, at early numeracy, that's certainly done, but it's not an expectation of the program. Okay. Sandra? So how does it, how does the program do that? Then it actually goes through 3 different program orientations. So again, this is how it was set up. So it's a play-based program because that's what children do best, right? As we said, this is how they learn, this is how they explore their environment, etc. And then it's up to the teacher or the adults in the room is to look at the observation of that child's progress within the different play settings. So whether it's structured play, it's free play, independent play, social play, or solitary play, it's the teacher it's her response, he or his, but it's their responsibility to really looking at observing the child in all the different contexts to see what does that child need. Is the child, only choosing this particular center? Are they only choosing this particular child? What can I do to help, to pave the way for them to try other things, to experiment with other things, or to play with other children. So, and again, that really speaks to how the classroom is organized. And so again, whether it's center-based or just allowing to have the children free flow into providing, a lot of stimulating and engaging activities and resources within the room. So those are the three, big orientations of this particular program. So again, the big thing, as I said, is the number one is learning through play. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to ask you all in our chat, if you could just write just a few words on what do you think play is? Like, what does play mean to you? I'll give you a minute to do that. Does everybody have access to chat? Hopefully.
Yeah. What's up, bud?
So what is play?
1 sec, bud.
Imagination, we have a few: no boundaries, enjoyment, interacting with others in a fun way, enjoying their specific interest, learning through imagination, improving social skills, motor functions, imagination, learning your likes and dislikes and developing skills, engaging in an activity for enjoyment, recreation, making it serious. We have interacting with others.
that's great.
Exploring themselves,
Absolutely.
interacting with the environment, real life, exploring and engaging with joy, creativity.
So a big thing here that I'm hearing is imagination. It's joy. It's playful. It's also self-directed, right? This is how children learn. We as adults, we label that as play, but for the child, what they're doing is they're exploring. Can you go back, please? They're they're manipulating their environment. They're doing experiments. They're developing scenarios. They're learning how to concentrate. They're learning how to focus. They're learning how to improvise and, manipulate, make different choices, but they're also acquiring the knowledge and concepts. And again, it's juxtaposed against, the social interaction that they're doing is how are they, able to share that with somebody? How are they collaborating? How are they cooperating? Are they able to have a respectful dialogue together? Being able to in play, it's, there are rules, and they're clearly, very subtle, and everybody has to sort of, subtly get along with those rules. Otherwise the game ends, right? But again, it's the power of what they do to understand their environment. And this is what's so key in child development. This is why I love this preschool program, because it really understands child development. It really understands, what children need, and the power of allowing them to that freedom of choice. Not all the time, of course, but again, that freedom of choice to really manipulate things, to really, go and explore different things, and to rather than being confined to, this is what you have to do, and I'm going to assess you, so you've got an end goal. So, it's play for an end result, as opposed to just allowing them to do it for their own means. So, again, like, I've been a teacher for many, many years, and if we could incorporate opportunities for children to actually play in all grade levels, I think we have a lot happier children, in our hands. So providing an environment, where children can have that kind of freedom, is important to create that, and that's what the ministry is telling us within the school boards in Quebec, and that that power of play, understanding that power of play, understanding child development is really important for the children for the teachers to understand. and how they assess children, how they look at, is this center working? Is this center not working? What other kind of activities can I provide for the children? What other structures can I put in place for them? Is all done through observation, right? So we're not giving, paper to pencil quizzes or tests or assessments. It's really looking at observation. And so, part of my job is to help teachers. How are you collecting observations? Are you doing observations on a child's, interaction, in the dramatic play center? Are you tracking, their movement within the classroom when it's free play? Are they only, as I said earlier, are they only going to the block center? Are they only going to the dramatic play center? Are they having difficulty expressing themselves, or expressing their needs? So, what can you do as a teacher to be able to help support the child? And this is what's a critical piece for teachers. And so, so it's again, it's all based on the teacher's observations of the children in many different settings and different contexts. Sandra? I agree. I don't know who said that, but I absolutely agree. So one of the things that the ministry is saying too is setting up. Could you go back, please? I don't know. Is it moving on its own? It's got a mind of its own. No, can we go back to classroom organization, please? Thank you. So again, the big orientation here is the classroom organization. How does the teacher, the school organize the classroom so that you have, a stimulating, enriched environment for children to be able to go and explore and express themselves, in different types of play. And the classroom doesn't just have to be,
I just want to
within
see
the
if they have
physical class
any
themselves.
vital information.
Sorry, we have
It's useful because it helps one to understand children. No, I know. But there are certain
maybe
things that
yeah, whoever's admin, thank you very much. The other thing is outside too. And so, part of my mandate is also to look at how do we encourage, teachers to take their class outside so that we're using the outdoors as a learning environment. It's the extension of the classroom, right? So looking at, what can you do to set up an outdoor classroom, or using your playground? What can you do to have free play out there? Or taking a box of loose parts, for instance, and taking it out into maybe a little corner of the schoolyard, or if you're lucky to have a forested area or a grassy area, for instance, or can you take a tarp and make a tent and then make that your little fort as a classroom in the afternoon? So it's looking at different ways of creating environments for children where they can blossom. Okay, thank you. So two big things that came out of this preschool program was not just the different orientations and basing it on developmental understanding of children and their absolute need to play, but it's also allowing them to free choice, because free choice and self-directed play is important, because it's also allowing them to choose. So if you are choosing to play with so-and-so, or choosing to play with blocks, you are making you're making a conscious decision that this is what I want to do, and I want to do it for X number of minutes. But I also understand that I have an expectation of behavior on how I'm supposed to behave when I'm playing with these resources or within that center, and how I'm supposed to behave if there are other children there. And I also know that when I'm finished, that there is also an expectation of behavior that I have to clean up or help others to clean up. So, making that independent choice is so important in the child's development. So the ministry has asked in the preschool program sorry, can you go back, please? Is that there are 2 independent play periods in their day. Now, again, this is really subject to whether or not the principal can can arrange that within the school day, because sometimes it's difficult if you need, if you're a small school, especially where you have, you need the teachers to, for
That's what
supervision.
it's supposed
But
to,
the
Tom,
independent
yes.
play
Oh,
periods are ones
Oh.
where, you know, it's free choice. They can go and play within the classroom for anywhere from
Well,
45 to
it's
60
awesome.
minutes. The recommendation is maybe one in the morning, and, you know, one in the afternoon, one outside, one inside. Now, again, that's really dependent upon how the school is able to manage that. And then we're not talking about recess here. Okay, we're not talking about that free time. And but it's just allowing the children to choose what activities that are of all of the wonderful resources that are in the classroom, and within that environment, that they can choose who they play with and what they want to play with. Okay. So that's a huge change. Okay, next, please. So the program is based on looking at 5 huge areas of development for children. And again, it's divided up into, as you can see, the physical and the motor, the emotional, the language, cognitive, and the social development. So I'm kind of hoping that all of you have received this from your schools, because this was a piece of information that was sent to all the schools from the ministry, to give you an overview of what the preschool program is. So it just lets you know that these are the 5 areas that of development. There are competencies that are in that. So if you look at the focus of development, you know, the teacher will look at motor skills, healthy lifestyles. You know, when you're looking at physical and motor, if we're looking at the emotional development, we're looking at, you know, the child's, you know, self-awareness, their confidence, you know, also looking at, you know, their emotional state. You know, can they recognize their own emotions? Can they do self-regulation? What kind of things do they need to help with that? I know Andrea's going to be talking about that a little bit later, but these are the 5 domains. And then again, you've got your focus of development and then some of the key features. So when you get a report card, for instance, you'll be getting a progress report, then you get 3 other report cards that really only talk about the child's development within these five domains. Okay. Maybe at the end, we'll just see if you all have received this information. If not, then I'll make sure that your school gets it out. Okay. So the ministry had prepared a 4-pager for all parents regarding an overview of the program. So, sorry, that was my timer. So it's all based on this synergy that as I mentioned, these 5 particular domains. So it looks at the synergy of how they all work in unison. And because again, this is holistic child, right? We can't take one thing out of context from another. You can't separate it. So that's the whole philosophy behind what the program is, and the training that was done that was initiated for teachers, really, you know, focused on this, is that, you know, looking at the whole child, that's the critical factor here in this developmental program. And so looking at through observation it's key for them to understand. Okay, Cassandra, if you could move on. Yeah, all right. So again, you know, the program is we recognize that you are the primary teacher, you are their lifelong teacher, and we are just a, you know, a partner in you know, in a small time span of your child's life. And so it's really the importance of the teamwork, the importance of recognizing that, you know, the adults that are around the child all work in unison, and, you know, are both, you know, understanding, if you will, you know, working from the same page, if you will. So we are very lucky within the Western Quebec School Board that we have Andrea and Jake here that help with that transition. You know, we have, you know, going into our 3rd year now with the preschool. It's working out very well with this wonderful, you know, gateway into the school, with affording, you know, our 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds within the school, and really setting them up for success within the rest of their elementary life. Okay. So I know will have some questions a little bit later, but I thank you very much for your time, and I'll see you later. Andrea?
Yeah, thanks, Anne. So we're going to look at a little bit of the characteristics now of a preschooler. And so it's really, it's really helpful to understand sort of their development, where they're at when we're looking at implementing routines or looking at strategies to support their start to school. So here we have a few different ones. And the first one is that children are naturally playful. We saw a few of those comments in the chat about play being so crucial to child development. And we're going to go into a little bit more detail as we move on. The second sort of big characteristic is that they're egocentric. So they only think of themselves first. And so that's really natural at that age. And that's because that children of this age have a need to understand who they are before they can consider or understand another person's feelings or perspectives. So it's a natural part of child development, but it's really important to understand that that is the space that they're working from, of they're thinking of their needs of themselves first, how they fit in the world before they think about, their parents or their teachers or their siblings or friends, things like that. And because of this, because they see the world through their own eyes, they'll often show resistance and defiance towards others and the requests or demands that are put on them. I'm sure we've probably all experienced this at some point, but it is, I think, reassuring to know that this is really natural. This is just part of their developmental process. Another main characteristic is fear separation. So preschool age children, K4, K5, they have an intense need to have a very strong attachment with adults. So it's really natural for them to be full of sadness, of fear, worry when they're separated from those that they're attached to. And we really see this come out, especially during the first school transition. Some children may have been in daycares before, so that's already been established a little bit, but for others, this might be the first time that they're spending significant amounts of time on a regular basis away from those people that they have a really strong attachment to. And then I think, as we probably have all experienced at some point or another, preschoolers lack self-control, they are impulsive. And again, this is because at that stage of development, their brain can only think of one thought or one feeling at a time. So that's why we often see children at this age acting immediately without thinking of the consequences of their behavior. And then around the age of 5, 6, 7, sometimes a bit later, the brain starts becoming a little bit more integrated. So we have a mixing of thoughts and feelings, and we'll start to see more of that impulse control, and we'll start to hear words to express frustration, to express feelings, and to sort of understand why those feelings and thoughts are happening. So this is important information to sort of remember when we're talking about preschool age children and where they're at developmentally. So the three main areas which will support our children in getting them ready for school are in play, in helping them to express emotions, and attachment. So the first one we're going to talk about is play. And when we think of children and what they love to do, and like Anne mentioned in her slides earlier, if you want to just pop to the next slide there, Cassandra, what we think of is play. And play is so important to their development because that's how they learn to make sense of their world. That's how children express their feelings, how they express who they are as their own person, begin to express, their individuality, what they want, what they need, and it allows for creative problem solving. It's crucial in child development, as we know, but it's also important to consider what true play looks like. And when we talk about that, we talk about play that is unstructured, it's exploratory, and it's expressive. So some examples of this are things like just playing outside. We see the picture here of the kid with, a shovel and a bucket or a pot of some sort, right? So really just really unstructured, exploratory, no rules, no boundaries set on them outside of what is safe, obviously, but letting them just use their imagination and having the freedom to build, to create, and explore. there's a lot of growth and learning in that. They're becoming the agent in discovering and exploring rather than being led by someone else, which is really valuable. And it ensures that children develop curiosity in their own learning as well. It's led by them. And the research really backs that up and shows that the brain is really enhanced and developed really well by spending hours of this in this type of play. That's, again, the three sort of keywords there: unstructured, exploratory, and expressive. It's important to create time and space for this play and let their interests guide the play. Sometimes when there's a lot of stimulation happening from a combination of screen time, of playing with their peers, their siblings, or just a lot of structured activities, which definitely have value, but when there's a lot of play spent in those areas, we might not see children engage in that really unstructured exploratory play. They might even become bored at times because it's very rigid for where they're at in their development. So if this is happening, if we see this, if we hear this, we might want to think about providing more time, more space, and more materials, and unstructured, and when we say time, unstructured time, to see that natural play develop as well. Play is not just toy play or pretend play. It could be, like I said, exploring outside. It could be building things with whatever you have laying around the house: cardboard, Legos, blocks. It could be fantasy or dramatic play. It could be acting out. It could be role play. Cooking and baking is something that a lot of children really enjoy, playing with Play-Doh. That's why that's, part of the reason why that's so appealing, is that it just allows for that free creation of anything. And it really aids in, again, the development, but also just reducing stress and anxiety. One other sort of type of play is symbolic play. And so that's sort of where we see the role play. It allows them to explore, it allows children to explore how they act, how they speak, the things they do, the resources they might need to take on a certain role. That's why we'll have children playing house, that are playing mommy or daddy, or playing as if they're a parent and they have a baby that they need to put to sleep. Taking care of a toy that they're all of a sudden the caregiver for, things like that. So that's sort of the symbolic play that, again, comes from that sort of open-ended free play. So next, we're, I think, going to look at emotions, and that's over to you, Andrea.
Hey, Jake. So we're going to talk a little bit about emotions and how important it is for children to begin to develop or expand on their emotional vocabulary. So that's words to describe how they are feeling. And so the reason for this is to help facilitate a smooth transition to school, because as we know, their day is going to be filled with lots of new learning experiences. And the transition to school can be difficult for some children, and just having an emotional vocabulary can help them communicate their feelings more effectively. So helping children to develop emotion words will help children to understand and name their emotions. So sometimes we don't always understand why a child might be upset or that they're crying, and especially children with a limited emotional vocabulary, they're going to have more difficulty communicating their feelings. So instead of using words, we may notice that our child might be expressing their emotions through their body language, facial expressions. We might even notice this through their behavior. We might be seeing more tantrums, meltdowns. So developing an emotional vocabulary can help children communicate their emotions better and to help avoid more of these situations. And it will help children to reach out for us for help. So we call that co-regulation. So children, basically, they need adults at this stage in their development to support them through their emotions as they continue to develop emotionally. And number 3, will allow the child to use them in difficult moments. So as children learn to use and understand their emotion words, they can communicate better with other children and adults. And this can help them feel more understood, which can also lead to more positive interactions. So we have a few resources here to share. One is a video by Dr. Dan Siegel, and the title of the video is on comforting an upset child. So it just explains how to support basically a child through their emotions. So looking at co-regulation. There's also a social story called The Emotion Scientist. It's another resource that can help children understand and start to notice what's happening in their body, how their body is trying to communicate these emotions. So it's also important to know that children they don't need to master these skills before starting school. It's a part of their development. They're developing in this area, but just beginning to have an emotional vocabulary can help them work through emotions that may arise as they start school and just in their day-to-day lives as well. So helping children to develop their own emotion, their own vocabulary, just some suggestions. So even just to think about the next time you might be driving in the car, there's a red light, you know, you're really feeling rushed to get to work or whatever the case may be. You might just start to maybe just start to, maybe fiddle with the music, but just take this opportunity to name how you're feeling. So you might say, I'm feeling frustrated. It's taking a long time to get home, or I might be nervous that I'm going to miss this very important meeting. So just take the opportunity to name some of the feelings that you're experiencing, and even to maybe ask your child, do you know what that word means? So it's another way to help them build their emotional vocabulary. You can also create a list of feeling words and maybe have your child come up with a list of feeling words, and you can discuss together. You could even use emojis to help them to identify different feelings. So this is just an example. We'll share this resource as well. Read together. You can work through a lot of the emotional vocabulary through some of the storybooks that you're reading together. You might look at how a character might be feeling. So some questions that might come up. What tells you that this character is feeling this way? What are some words that you can use to describe that feeling that the character is having? What feeling maybe is the opposite of what that character is feeling? And when you're feeling this emotion, sad, how do you show it? So those are some ways to start to develop or expand on your child's emotional vocabulary. So we can go to the next slide. So again, just exploring and understanding emotions, as we know, can be challenging for children. This is very normal. Storybooks is a really great way to help with that. And here we have some book suggestions that are really good ones to initiate discussions around emotions. And we also included a few activities as well that you might want to try with your child. And the activities that we selected will help to recognize different emotions and how they feel in their body, and just to encourage naming the emotions and expressing those feelings. The next slide. So now we're going to look at the role of attachment in preparing for school. So a strong relationship between adults and children supports healthy development. And when these needs are met, that's when children are able to play and learn and form other healthy relationships. So children really actually depend on these deep adult relationships in order to grow independence, so to become more independent. And it's also reassuring to know that our children cannot be too attached, and it doesn't hinder their independence. And when we really focus on aiming more for dependence, and we just kind of embrace the stage of development that they're at, independence will naturally follow. So this is when we'll hear, you know, our child say something like, you know, I will do it myself. You know, I will do it. That's okay. So this really shows that, you know, fostering that dependence will lead to the child wanting to be more independent. So some suggested ways to continue to build and strengthen these relationships include play. So just try to find as many moments and opportunities to play with your child. You know, same for myself with my children. Sometimes I just, you know, the busyness of life and schedules and routines, but just even taking 5 minutes of just being silly and just having fun really, you know, deepens the relationship and just connecting with our children. So just finding time to play, you know, just brings us closer together and allows them to feel you know, comfortable with wanting to talk and share how they're feeling. So reading stories, telling stories is another way that connects us. It also, of course, fosters a love for reading and books. And it's another opportunity to allow for the sharing of feelings and what's going on in their world. Some topics can be really overwhelming in real life. For example, starting kindergarten can be quite stressful for some children. So just telling maybe a story around starting kindergarten will help to kind of work through the child's own stress and maybe anxieties around that. So it helps them to work through their own emotions as well. So we'll share some suggestions for kindergarten on the topic of starting school. There's also creating, just almost finished the slide, if you could go back, and just the other last one is around creating rituals. So as we talked about, just you know, allowing for you know, spending time, you know, creating rituals around things that's important to us. It might be, you know, reading stories, watching, you know, our Friday night movie together, just, you know, ways to deepen our, you know, relationship with our children. And along with play and emotion really helps to prepare for school and that transition. So next, we're going to look at tips and strategies to help facilitate a smooth transition. And we're going to talk about structure and routine, turning struggles into playful connections, bedtime solutions, and we're going to talk about bedtime separation as well. So the next slide, thank you. So when children start school, they begin school, they experience a lot of routines and transitions within a very structured school day. So having routines at home can help with the adapting to a new school environment. So why is it important? Well, it, you know, daily routines help everyone to, of course, stay organized and to get things done. And number two, we have, sorry, lost my slide for a second. Children know what is expected of them, and it supports behavior. So when children know what is expected of them, they tend to be more cooperative with us. So for example, as well, your routine might include around screen time, when screen time ends, bedtime, morning expectations, and steps to a daily routine for your family. So we have, you might want to write down what a typical day looks like for your family. So this might include what's important to you, what's your values, your culture, beliefs. Think about the things that are important in your day. So this might be as simple as, reading to your child. It might be brushing the teeth in the morning. Write down a simple routine that lists regular activities and things that you want to remember, and display a routine where you and your family can see them. And just something also that's important to mention is that, often in the summer, we become kind of less structured in our routines. This is very normal. So just to think about giving yourself a few weeks before school starts to start implementing more consistent routines, which will really help with the transition to school. And next slide, please. Thank you. So I want to share with you some visual resources that may be helpful in planning to establish a new routine, or even just to make changes to an existing one that you have. So the first one, we're going to start with Story Stones. And the first link on the slide, there's lots of details around how to use them, but it's pretty simple. Basically what they are, they're small rocks with pictures that illustrate the routine. So you can use Story Stones with your child to discuss the routines, and you can let them to decide which order that the activities are going to happen in. You might want to ask, will you brush your teeth before or after your bath? There's an opportunity to arrange them in order, change the order of the routine. You can discuss each step with your child. I use story routines for the morning routine, bedtime routine, and as well as snack options. So I'm not sure if you can see them, but so I kind of list them as like morning routine. So all the ones that relate to the morning. And I have the bedtime ones, as well as the snack options. And next we have resources for morning and bedtime, the visual cards. And we also have, it actually includes some great information just generally on how to use them, but also there's the first then board as well. So I'll just give you a bit of information about the first then board if you're not familiar with this. But it's a visual tool that helps to break down tasks into smaller pieces. So for example, you can use the board to help your child to understand that, okay, first we need to put on your PJs, then we need to brush your teeth. So if they're needing to, if the entire routine is a little bit too much, it just really helps to break it down into smaller steps for the child. Sometimes it's also used to motivate the child to complete a task that's less desirable. So you can use something that it's a more motivator to be able to complete the less desired task. So just for example, I have one with just the first then, but this one, it's actually 3 steps. So it's the first, next, and then last. So an example, I'm not sure if everybody is seeing this properly, but so first it would be, okay, you need to go to the bathroom, there's a bedtime story, and then we go to bed. So if it's a little bit too overwhelming, so for example, this might be the complete routine, but sometimes we might have to take some of the task and use the first then board to break it down into smaller tasks. So if you're wondering if this is something that would be helpful, some things to consider would be first asking yourself, what would be the goal of using a first then board? If you're having to use a motivator, is it a strong motivator to choose from? Like first, we're going to pick up your toys and then you can watch a show. So in order for them to pick up the toys, the motivator needs to be something that they really want to do. Does my child constantly ask questions regarding a preferred activity? Or do they require reminders about the routine? Does my child sometimes refuse to complete certain activities or tasks? So if you're finding that you're answering yes to some of these questions, then maybe using a visual routine as well as the first then board to break it down into smaller steps might be helpful. And that's it. And oh no, still my turn. Sorry. So, and here is just, it's just to, so turning struggles into playful connections. So as we know with our little ones, transitions, especially moving from, one activity to another activity, especially if it's something that they're really enjoying and they're having a lot of fun at doing, it might be really challenging. So making it playful is often a solution. So even though sometimes we might have really consistent routines, transitions can be challenging. Often for my children, if they're doing an activity and now we're transitioning to bedtime, often to make that go more smoothly, sometimes I'm being more playful. I'm pretending that I'm an animal and they're going to get on my back and we're going to get upstairs. Like sometimes it just bringing play into transitions can make the transition go more smoothly. So sometimes it's a song, sometimes it's just being playful with your child. The next slide. And this slide, we're just sharing with you some songs that might make the transition a little easier if you're looking for a song to help with that. These are songs from the Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, the YouTube channel. It's a cartoon version of the Mr. Rogers Neighborhood, and it uses the Fred Rogers social emotional curriculum to teach skills to young children. So just some of those that you might want to check out. And I'll hand it over to Jake.
Great, thanks, Andrea. So we're going to talk a little bit about bedtime and bedtime routines. So we know that sleep is an essential function. It allows children to be at their best and to function properly. It helps them regulate emotions and just have the energy to get through the day. And when children attend school, it's even more important that they're getting consolidated sleep to support their learning and their growth. So we know that bedtime challenges can be really difficult sometimes. The goal for our children is to get the sleep that they need with a smooth and easy routine. It's recommended that 3 to 5-year-olds get at least 11 to 13 hours of sleep. And as long as it's somewhere around that number, as long as they're really, the important thing is that they're managing well throughout the day, then that is usually the an appropriate number of hours for sleep. There's a couple of resources here that we wanted to share. So one is Restful Parenting, and they have Healthy Sleep for Children. It's a information sort of book created by sleep consultants at an organization called Restful Parenting, and it covers topics like sleep environment, stalling, bedtime battles, how to create healthy routines, the expectations of what sleep is for children, like Andrea mentioned, transitioning to bedtime, and addressing any kind of fears and anxieties. And then there's also a sleep webinars for parents by Learn Quebec. So they are a nonprofit organization that provide resources and services for English school boards in Quebec. And they have a series of webinars around sleep for parents as well. Some of the issues, you can pop over to the next slide, please, Cassandra. One of the bigger ones are fear separation. So preschoolers might have an intense, or they do have an intense need to have a strong attachment with adults. So again, it's natural for them to be full of sadness and worry when they're separated from those who they're attached to. And sleep and bedtime is really, if we look at, 11 to 13 hours, it's the longest time that your child is separated from you. And again, at that age, going to sleep is a separation. It's a disconnection from their parent or their person that they're attached to. Of course, as they grow, they become more independent. And understanding, their personality, their development helps us build an understanding of why those bedtime struggles might exist. So some children are much more attached, much more anxious. Some are completely fine being on their own. It really depends. Bridging the nighttime separation helps children feel connected even while they're apart, and it gives them a lot of comfort and reassurance. So we know that the separation can cause a lot of stress, frustration, sadness, but bridging that separation helps them overcome that. And it means that you offer them a connecting point to the next point of contact that you'll have with them. So usually the morning, but it helps if they are focused on your return to them rather than the goodbye. So that is, talking about what you're going to do in the morning, talking about your routine in the morning, having that routine that's really structured helps them focus on, okay, I'm going to see you in the morning and this is what, we're going to do. Also giving them something to remind them of you while they're trying to get to sleep. So it could be a stuffed animal, it could be a note, it could be something that you've created or built together, something to maintain that connection as they're trying to get to sleep. Can be helpful. There's a infographic here by Dr. Deborah McNamara, who's really big in the attachment field. Again, I know it's very small on the slide there, but again, you can find it on our website. And it'll be there. We'll put the link in the chat at the end. And it just talks about the different ways to address, to create bridging routines for your children.
So now we're gonna talk about what are some other things to consider when preparing our children for school. So building an understanding of the transition to school for the child and looking at attachments and relationships. So also building those with other adults. So the next slide. In order to help children prepare for starting school, it's also important to build an understanding of the transition for the child. So we can do this by reading stories about starting school. In the next slide, we're going to share with you some book examples. Talk to your child about what the first day of school is going to look like. It might also be helpful to create even a visual schedule of what their day is going to look like, so they also know what to expect, which will help them to feel less worried, nervous, or scared. Additionally, if your child is taking the bus to school, it might also be helpful to discuss what they can expect with taking the bus. You could also set expectations for your child to ensure that the day goes smoothly. So practice using their lunch kit. So they can learn how to open it, to understand which items are for lunch, which items are for snacks. You can also go over the bathroom hygiene routines as well. Encourage independence by having your child practice getting dressed. There's also the winter, but we're not there yet. But that's also something that's going to come up as well, and that could create a bit of worry for your child. So just helping them be prepared when that happens. You could also help them label their items for school, such as their shoes. Consider also getting shoes with Velcro straps. That could help just minimize the stress and frustration with having to tie shoes if they're not necessarily there yet. Familiarize your child with the school by driving by, making several drives by, walking around the school ground, playing on the playground structures if you have access to that. There's also attending orientation, which would, really help your child become more familiar as well. There's the information sessions, there's meet the teacher. You can also explore the school website. Sometimes on certain websites, they do have virtual tours, but you can also check out the website with your child. So the more that your child knows about starting school, the more comfortable they're going to be with going to school and starting school. And so here are some book suggestions that we're also going to share. We're going to share these links with you as well. So there's The Kissing Hand, Butterflies on the First Day, and The Night Before Preschool. So these are really great books to watch with, well, you could read it, or there's the YouTube link as well. And the next slide. So to help children to experience also a smooth transition, it's also important to help them feel connected to their school and their teacher and peers as well. And these connections provide security and comfort, which helps to reduce anxiety and also just to enhance their love for learning and wanting to go to school. So a bond with a teacher can be established even before school begins, and we can do this by by taking the lead. So basically what that means is that if there's an opportunity for you to introduce your child to the teacher, it allows the child to feel safe and to know that this is somebody that they can trust. So just looking for opportunities on the first day of school to be able to do that if possible. There's also looking for similarities. So a child, we know, they'll feel connected to the teacher when they share things in common. So sometimes we have to be creative in finding these similarities, but it could be even like, oh, I noticed that your teacher likes the same color as you. Just simple things that helps the child to feel special and feel connected to their teacher. And it's also important to maintain a positive dialogue as well. So speaking positively about the teacher. And this really helps to safeguard the relationship that the child has with the teacher and their school. And it creates safety, a feeling of safety for the child, just feeling connected, and just, generally happy and excited to be at school. Having a connection with the teacher, it also makes goodbyes a lot easier, which is why drop off, after 2 weeks, you notice that it becomes a lot easier. It's because they have a bond, they have a connection with the teacher. Schools also work really hard to develop these relationships with children and their families as well. So orientation, meet the teacher, their staggered entry to visit the school and the teacher. These are all really great opportunities to start to develop a positive relationship with the teacher, with the school, and the school community. And now it's off to you, Jake.
Yeah, thanks. So we're just going to briefly chat quickly about self-regulation. So self-regulation is a really important skill for everyone to learn, but especially young children when they're dealing with all of these changes. And self-regulation is really just a way to help children manage and, like it says, regulate their emotions and find ways through play and through things that are appropriate for that age, like breathing, for children to manage their big emotions when they do inevitably come. So there's a few books here on using breathing as a strategy for self-regulation to help control their breathing, to help calm them back down. There's there's My Magic Breath, there's Lemonade Hurricane. Sorry, they're small there, so I can't see them quite clearly. A World of Possibilities and Breathe Like a Bear, sorry. And those are all good books you can pick up. They're pretty widely available, and they're just fun, creative ways to teach that skill to children of that age. It lets them see it, it lets them practice it in a way that isn't sort of just rote repetition. And so those are a few recommendations there. One of the other things that we talk a lot about is mindfulness. So that's helping children connect and relate to their emotions and recognizing what their body might need. It helps to reduce stress. It brings us back into balance. It also really helps children develop self-awareness. So helping them understand what emotions they might be feeling, helping them regulate those emotions by, again, exploring the world around them through play, through interacting with the world. A really good activity it's called the 5 senses activity. And so that helps children engage with all 5 of their senses. So naming 5 things that they can see, 4 things that they can touch, 3 things that they can hear, 2 things that they can smell, and 1 thing that they can taste. So that's a really good way, especially when children are a little bit dysregulated or upset or stressed or anxious, of helping them connect with the world around them, gets them, outside of their head, their own thoughts and feelings a little bit, in a playful way, in a creative way, and also sort of helps them learn to recognize and attend to their emotions that they might be feeling. Finally, we have, again, so a lot of this stuff is on our website, but a bunch of mindful exercises and resources. There's About Kids Health, there's Mind Yeti, there's Breather, which is again about the breath and using breathing to help regulate. And like I said, a lot of these are on our website, but any kind of mindfulness or emotional regulation skills for 3, 4, 5, 6-year-olds are really useful. And so I think that's it for us.